We actually
You're good.
need mics.
It's okay.
We'll just move it around. Thank you. So, first of all, thank you for being here. And I want to thank myself for being here because today's the NBA Finals, and I really don't want to be here, but this is very, very important. It's important to me. I think it's important to all of you, important to our children. Safety and security of the children are very important. And just like this video that you just watched, every time I see one of these happening, it just kills me. And so this is not directly related to the work that I do. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, but I just thought to the extent that we can all make a difference, we should. If you just sit home and let somebody else do it, nothing is going to get done, right? Especially Washington. All they do is say, you know, we're very sorry, and hopefully next time it's not going to happen, and it happens again and again. So this is a widespread situation, a problem. Two of these school shootings that we just watched, and I love that video, 2005, and this very last one that we just saw, guess what happened? Both guns were taken from a grandfather and from a father, and the shooting happened because we had two people that had their guns readily available to be stolen by a child or a grandchild. So I guess a couple of things that they asked me to talk about was the gun safety issue, and also what can you do if you're being targeted, if you think that you're being bullied, or you may feel fear because of another student, what do you do? So I'm just going to briefly talk about that. First of all, and I'm going to go over my notes so that I don't forget anything. With regards to gun safety, let me tell you, California has a very strong gun safety rules with regards to the storage and movement of weapons. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So you have to treat all guns as if they're loaded. If I say this, some of you may laugh, but trust me, I've been to people's home where there's a gathering of 20 people, somebody brings their gun, they want to show off their guns, and they're literally pointing it to my face. Hey, take a look, I just bought this gun. And I'm thinking, how stupid is this guy? Can you imagine? You have to treat all weapons as if they are loaded. Even if you're 100% sure that you just unloaded the gun yourself, you need to keep checking, double checking. I'm sure Sergeant Craig would tell you. He would do it all the time, right? Am I correct?
He has a gun.
There you go. He has a gun. So that's the first thing. I think you should always assume that a gun is loaded. You should never point a weapon at a person, ever, no matter what you're doing, right? And let's see. I was going to say, you know, most people don't get this because every time I go somewhere and they want to show off their weapon, they're pointing the gun at me or somebody else, which is accidental shooting happen all the time, by the way. Keep your fingers off the trigger for those of you who have a gun, unless you're ready to shoot. If you're not ready to shoot, do not touch that trigger, okay? And that also means that you have to keep your finger outside of the trigger guard. You have to know your target, know the surroundings, and know what is behind it before you shoot, for God's sake. So I don't know how much of that pertains to this meeting of ours, but this is something maybe you can tell others also. I'm sure you know people that have weapons or carry or store weapons for safety or guns or what else. Store your guns safely and securely to prevent unauthorized use. If these two fathers and grandfathers had done this, 37 people would be alive today. 37 children will be alive today. Well, I think 7 or 8 of them were adults, but nevertheless. So you have to use a California-approved safety device on the gun. It's a trigger lock. You can buy this at any sporting event, sporting place, or gun safety, gun store. They have to have a trigger lock, and they have to be stored in a safe. Let me tell you, in California, if that happens, the person that owned or possessed the weapon would also be charged, probably with a felony. It's a wobbler, so it could be a misdemeanor or a felony, but they could be charged with a felony, and they could face prison time for not properly storing the weapon. So very, very important that you do that. Tell your children and you yourself, don't ever shoot at water, don't shoot at hard surfaces, don't shoot the weapon in the air. The bullet ricochets and the bullet comes back, believe it or not. It doesn't disappear. If there are any children here or individuals under 18, if you see another child with a weapon, leave the room. Do not attempt to stop them or prevent them from pointing the gun or showing the gun or whatever. You just leave. You leave the room and you immediately report this to the first person you can. So with regards to gun laws, I think we just talked about some of the gun laws. Let me just briefly tell you that moving the gun from one location to another, you must make sure the gun is unloaded. And it has to be in your trunk. If the car doesn't have a trunk, then it has to be in a locked container in the back. Okay? And the bullets must be separated from the weapon. Otherwise, you're illegally carrying the weapon. Or transporting it, I should say, from one place to another. Now let me just quickly get on to restraining orders. So one thing that I want to talk about, this may pertain to some of you as well. People call my office all the time and they feel threatened by someone, or they feel that their children are being threatened by someone. And what I'm telling you is not written, this is not the rule of God, okay? These are just my view of how you can protect yourself and your family members. That's all it is, really. That comports with or complies with California law. There is something called the restraining order. There are several versions of it. And one is basically a civil restraining order, and the other one is domestic violence, and then we have one for elderly, so on and so forth. As far as a civil restraining order, they asked me, what should children do if they feel threatened by another student? Well, first thing is I think they should report and try to de-escalate. If the situation is happening right there, as fast as you can, you got to get out of there. But try to de-escalate. Something that I don't understand is we don't teach our children. I think my wife was mentioning this to me. We don't teach our children to take rejection really well. Some, they get rejected and they become violent and they become hostile and they become vindictive and they want to, strike back. You know what? Hey, if somebody rejects you, so on. Move on with your life. So teach your children that. Get them help. Get them therapy if they have to. See a therapist to avoid getting into worse situations. One thing that I do, Dr. Pino asked me to mention, that I see all the time in my office is this lack of respect for parents. Every time, almost every time, that I have a child in my office, they're being charged with a serious crime, or even a little thing, like maybe, shoplifting. There's this lack of respect for the parents, for the authorities, for the law, for anything. And of course the parents allow it to happen. They just sit there and cuss at their parents right in front of me, and the mom says, oh, don't worry, mommy, we're gonna get through this. I mean, total disrespect, cussing at the parents all the time. And my approach is just a little different, okay? I don't want to mention it here because nobody's gonna come see me if I say what I do, but my approach is very, very different. First thing is I confiscate their car right there in my office. And I say, go report me to the LAPD or the sheriff department. All right, so very quickly, what is a civil harassment restraining order? Basically, any one of you, people call me all the time, they say, oh, we have to get a lawyer, we have to spend a lot of money, we don't have the money. You don't need any money, you don't really need a lawyer to get a civil harassment restraining order. As long as you're telling the truth, and that truth involves unlawful threat of violence or actual violence, stalking, credible threats, right? You can go to any court, LA Superior Court, ask for a package. They'll hand you the package of restraining order. There are people in court that will actually help you. If they're not in court, they will they will tell you where to go to get help. So you can do all of this for free. You fill out forms, you hand it back to the court. They'll have the sheriff serve this individual that has threaten you or whatever. And a temporary order will be issued by the judge that day if the judge believes the threat or the threat of violence or the actual violence is actually true. There are other circumstances, but I'm not going to get into it right now. We don't have time. Maybe in the question and answer session. That temporary order is going to be served on this individual, and within 21 days, the court is going to have a hearing. And at that hearing, the defendant, or the respondent, I should say, will have an opportunity to be heard by the judge. And if the court feels that this threat or violence or stalking or whatever is real, the judge can issue an order up to 5 years, which can be renewed within 90 days of the expiration of the original order by you. So it's not like you really need an attorney to do this. I recommend it only when there is real credible threat of violence. What I am seeing in the Persian community, and probably in other communities, but I see more of it in the Persian community, is that people are filing these restraining orders just because they want to get away from someone, somebody who has a legitimate purpose. For example, somebody they owe money to, and the person just makes one phone call and says, hey, listen, you gotta pay me. And they want to get a restraining order against this guy. Now, you better pray to God that the respondent doesn't come to my office, because if they do, I'm coming after you. This is something that I want to make sure the entire community knows, and I keep mentioning it in the radio. The court's resources are not for a joke. They are to be used for a real serious purpose, and in this case, to protect your children. So if there is someone in the school that has threatened your child, you can actually go to court, and you can accompany a child under the age of 12, by the way. The judge will appoint you as a guardian. You don't need a lawyer, and you can get a restraining order against this child that is threatening your child in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, all of this is after you report the incident to law enforcement. But for now, I'm done, so let's get to the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Kade, criminal defense attorney. Thank you for your overview. So the next speaker is